Okay, hey, welcome everyone, and thanks for coming out to the Horizontal Construction Business Opportunities, and we have a phenomenal morning. I know everyone's just getting back from Halloween festivities last evening. We had a little light showing this morning, and by about noon we'll be trickled probably to 100%. We've got a fantastic showing up here. We've got two phenomenal speakers. Oh, I'll let you be the judge of who the two are. And I'm Don DeGidio. Had an opportunity to do this last year and the year before, and we welcome back Rick and Bob, and then we welcome new to the team Mike with the United States Air Force, and I'll introduce them as well. Big year, as General Semonite alluded to, and we also have General Spellman out here if you have any other additional questions regarding the Civil Works program, and we appreciate everyone. So first, I'll introduce each person as we come up. We've got a few slides. We have an hour, but we're backed up against lunch, so that's an easy time. So if you have some questions that you want to really get out, please feel free to ask the panel. Our first speaker represents the United States Army Corps of Engineers and Major General Rick Kaiser. He is the Commanding General for Mississippi Valley Division and formerly LRD Division, and then overseas in Afghanistan. I've known Rick just a few years, 31, I think. Came in the Army the same day at the very beginning of the new fiscal year, and we had a great opportunity. If you all don't know, Rick has an identical twin, Bob, and there's been a lot of areas in our career. We've all been three together at some point in time, whether that be battalion command or Ranger school, and I always found it interesting with the Ranger instructors. They, as Rick went through and passed, they had this other gentleman come in, and it was Bob. And they said, hey, didn't I already give you a go? Just get on. So I think Bob had an easier time at Ranger School than you did, Rick. And then they both commanded similar battalions in the 10th Mountain Division, except fortunately they went different ways in combat. And I was blessed to have a sister forward operating base next to Rick under the 10th Mountain Division. But without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Rick Kaiser. Thank you, Sheriff. All right.
Well, thanks, Don, and all of that's true. And but you know, he said there's two outstanding speakers, and I know Don, and he's already included himself as one. Thanks for that. So I'm gonna try to go quick today to allow more time for Q&A. And those of you who were here last year, you're going to see a very similar format. I'm going to show you just a flavor of what's out there for the whole Corps in terms of horizontal construction opportunities. Then I'm going to give you a little taste of what's going on in terms of the supplemental that many of you have heard about, focused on my area. I'm going to show you some of the outreach events that I think are very, very important. So again, we're going to go through this real quick, and I'm going to just hit a couple of things that it's important for everybody to recognize. So I do personally, with the Mississippi Valley Division, I'm focused on the Civil Works arena. And we've got a large program to execute in the upcoming years. And if you look at this, if your business applies to any one of these areas, navigation, flood risk management, recreation, huge bits on environmental stewardship that we're going to need help with, and you can look at the rest of those, just tremendous opportunities are out there. And I look forward to questions after this session about where small business is going to fit in. So those are the areas that we traditionally focus on in Civil Works. For many of you, small businesses, if you want to operate regionally, it's important to know that the Corps of Engineers Civil Works boundaries are based on watersheds for very logical reasons. But if you're interested in regional work, take a look at this map and see what color you kind of align with. And you can pay more attention to that portion of the briefing. So I will go across the spectrum for each one of the divisions. But if you're out in the Northeast and you want to work regionally, listen to the North Atlantic thing a little bit more closely. If you're interested in going overseas, and I don't mean Hawaii, I'm talking about Iraq or Afghanistan and other places, we still need work done over there as well. And I think you heard the chief mention that yesterday. So consider that. So this is kind of how we're broken down, and you can see, again, we are based on watersheds for a reason. Now, if you look at horizontal construction in a macro sense, what I've done here is broken down by NAICS codes who the two biggest divisions were to provide that service. So for instance, if you just talk heavy construction, you'll see South Atlantic, okay? That's that little lower southeast, Atlanta all the way down to Florida, et cetera. $1.3 billion, right, in FY18. That's a lot. And then my division, a little bit under $1 billion, okay? Highway, street, and bridge, a lot of that is very critical work. You'll see smaller numbers, but look at the preponderance of the work was in southwestern and northwestern. These trends will likely continue. And you could take a look across the rest of the spectrum, whether it's oil and gas pipelines or poured concrete. You'll notice that not one division has a monopoly on this work. They're spread across. So whatever your portfolio looks to represent, you can see where the historic trends have been. And now I'm going to start to go division by division. So the first thing I'll show you is a map. Again, if you want to key in on that region, and I'll show you a highlight of a singular project, and then show you a larger swath. But I would recommend highly that you go to the booth, and the booth is shown on these slides. So for North Atlantic Division, it's booth 542. Is anybody here from North Atlantic? Okay, I know there's other conferences going on. So, and in each one of these slides, if you read the text, think about your small business and how you fit into what that division is trying to accomplish. So in the North Atlantic Division, they're really looking to develop small businesses to maximize their opportunities within their footprint. Okay, so they're really trying to strengthen their program, which means there's more opportunities for you to get in the door if you hadn't been in the past. So they've got about $3 billion eligible for small business. That's a pretty good chunk. Last year they did about 25%. So, the opportunities are there in the North Atlantic. And this slide shows, it gives you a flavor for kind of what's out there. Always a need for dredging, so you'll see that up there. Little bit of levee system repairs, so you start to see the flavor of work that's available in the North Atlantic District. And if you look at the across the top, and I'll just introduce this slide, these are the types of projects, where they are, if you're interested, when we think that contract's going to be on the street, the particular NAICS code. This is the monetary value, so kind of rough range. That may not always describe the capabilities, but it gives you an idea of what's out there for that project. And we look at the small business, some of these are still generic, and we're still working through how we're going to do the acquisition on these. And that's what the last two columns show. So this is, I'll leave it up there for a second. That's the North Atlantic's portfolio, and this is just the tip of it. Okay, so go visit them at booth 542. Now I'm going to go to the South Atlantic District Division. Now, this area has really faced a lot of challenges, and we'll talk a little bit about supplementals, but over the last few years has been hit very, very hard with the hurricanes, and especially as Michael just came through. And this division also has operations in the Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. So if you're interested in those regions, or somebody that is, tremendous amount of work to be done upcoming. South Atlantic is located in booth number 859. So let's just take a look at their program and what they're trying to accomplish. So if you're a hub zone, they're trying to find you, okay, and service disabled veteran small businesses. They're trying to increase their portfolio for there. So if you fit into one of those, or somebody else that does, go talk to South Atlantic. I'll tell you, anybody here from South Atlantic? Okay, there you go. Well, they were the number one. They won this year's Small Business Performance Award. Okay, so go see them. 35%, look at that. 35% of their portfolio went to small businesses. So that's a good chunk of money. So I'll show you, again, some of their work that's out there. And again, I've already introduced the top. But what you'll see again, beach renourishments. Okay, so if you're into moving large quantities of sand, there you go. There's always a need for dredging here as well. So these are very, very important ports and harbors for our country. And dredging has been one of those areas where we've seemed to have had a shortfall in capacity, okay? And, the Corps is having challenges keeping up with the requirements with dredging. So that's an important one, not just for this region, but for all of them. So pay attention to that. And again, look, pretty good sums of money there, $5 to $10 million for a beach renourishment program. That's pretty good. And you can see the rest of them there. Water control structure culvert down in Jacksonville. And HHD is Herbert Hoover Dam. So this is a huge project, very important one, and a lot of horizontal work available there. And I'll leave that up for a second if you want to take a look. And here's more. And again, this was an area that was hit very, very hard with the last 2 years' worth of storms, and there's a renewed interest to get monies moving forward on many of these projects, even though they weren't part of the storm damage. So let's move over to the Great Lakes and the Ohio River Division. So this is the heartland, if you will, the Midwest, encompasses the Great Lakes, always a need for dredging up there, and then the Ohio, Tennessee, and Cumberland basins. And you can see that they stretch all the way down to Nashville, just north of Memphis. And 33% of their portfolio went to small business. 33%, that's pretty good. And I think they added, if you look on the screen, I think in the spirit of Halloween, they're looking for booze. So I don't know, is anybody here from LRD? Yeah, very, very witty, Joe. But they're trying to increase their portfolio as well with industry days. So you're going to see a lot of industry days in LRD, and a lot of it is focused on operations surrounding the barrier in Chicago to fight Asian carp. So a lot of innovation going on up there as well. Trying to improve in women-owned small businesses, and again, service disabled. So if you know anybody in those categories, go see them at booth 445. Here's a snapshot of some of the work that they're going to look for. They got a lot of dams in this region, a lot of work that needs to go on over there. And so you can take a look at some of these. Pretty good sums of money, too. I mean, there's some smaller ones in there, the flood-proofing contracts in Huntington District, and raise your hand. I got Huntington sitting right in here. You know, feel free to talk to them about that one in particular. They've got 3 of them on this, so thanks for coming in. But that's a flavor that you'll see for Great Lakes and Ohio River Division. Now I'm going to talk about mine next. So the Mississippi Valley Division encompasses the center coast. Okay, so I always talk about the Great Lakes as the north coast. You're in the Gulf Coast right now. You got the Atlantic, the Pacific Coast, and then the Mississippi River is really the center coast for our country. And so that's my area, and you can see 62% of our monies went obligated here. $736 million last year is a pretty good chunk. And our focus, again, I think all of us didn't do as well in the service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and women-owned businesses. So we're really looking to improve in those areas right there. My booth is 344, and we've got some really nice handouts that gives you a one-stop shop of all the jobs and work that's available within my division. So we deal with snow from Canada and then the nice weather you have down here in New Orleans, except for this morning. All right, here's just a snapshot of some of the things going on. So I've got a tremendous amount of levees that go up and down the river. And we've had historic floods over the last few years. I mean, I can go back. Last year was a top 10 flood event for our country. Most of you didn't know that because our levees and floodways all operated the way they're supposed to, but they sustained damage. So we have to get after a lot of this, okay? So a lot of earthwork. And I can answer questions later about innovative acquisition strategies and how you might apply to that. But take a look at these. And I've got VT, raise your hand there. I see Clancy and DeRozier and Sam back there. No, he's not back there. There's Steve. So come and see them at booth 344. We're also doing a lot of waterworks. So take a look at that top one, aquifer recharge. So this is it's an awesome project that's going on. And it's an emerging growth area for the Corps, I would submit. And then if you look at the acquisition strategies, you can see we're still maturing some of our strategies as we go. Here's another snapshot of some more jobs that are out there. You know, if you're into construction, in St. Louis District, if you look at that second bullet, we're working on an interpretive center. And so that's a wonderful project that we have on the books that I think you should find very, very interesting. Again, a lot of pumping stations and levee work in the Mississippi Valley Division, but a lot of money is available for small business. I'm going to move over to a special category that I manage, and this is a debris management portfolio. So in the Corps of Engineers, you know, we're the engineers for FEMA, and with all the emergencies we've had, we manage the contract that goes after debris. So we're in the middle of working our way through this. Wendell, raise your hand. Come talk to Wendell about this. This is a critical area, and it's a huge growth potential. Storms and debris in large quantities happen everywhere in the United States. So even if this goes to a big, I guarantee you there's a need for small businesses located in different regions to get after this. Okay, you could look at the California wildfires as an example. You could see the massive amounts of debris that just happened from Michael, and you know what happened, in Puerto Rico. And so these disasters are, we can try to wish them away, but that's not going to work. So come and talk to us about this. It's managed through my Rock Island, and Steve's back there. Raise your hand. So see him and Wendell if you want to talk about this, but I would tell you, we need you. Let's move out to the Pacific and the Northwest Division. So take a look at this. This is headquartered in Portland, but stretches a vast area. And if you talk in terms of geography, this is one of the biggest divisions we have. And you can see their focus there. Small business and socioeconomic small business opportunities, okay? And the Northwest Division did very well this year in the service veterans category. So that's one thing that I think they're going to sustain, but they're looking to increase in others. Booth number 962, and now let's take a snapshot of some of the big jobs they have. Some earthworks with return channels in Walla Walla. Again, that's not bad. It's a smaller job, $10,000 to $250,000 potentially, but still good work for folks. And you see some mid-range ones, a lot of levees again in Kansas City district. So a lot of good earthworks that need to be done out in the Northwest. Again, a very large area. So if you're in that region, go visit booth 962. I'm going to drop to the south now, South Pacific. If you are in the California area, a lot of work going on in the wall here, okay? So I don't think some of those are reflected, but there's a tremendous amount of work that's going on in the border wall. And so go to booth 1058. South Pacific did very well in certain categories, but what they're really looking at is small disadvantaged businesses this year and disabled veterans in hub zones as well. So if you're looking to increase your performance in those areas, come see South Pacific. And here's a snapshot of some of their work. They do a lot of environmental work out in that direction as well, which is not necessarily represented on this slide. So some breakwater repairs, so heavy rock work that needs to be done. A big one, over $10 million up in Sacramento district. So unique work out in the South Pacific region. If you're interested, go to booth 1058. Southwestern Division, huge amount of work on the border wall. Okay, and that's going to continue. And it's not reflected on here, but please acknowledge that is a big opportunity. And you can see where they're at. Dallas, Fort Worth is the headquarters. But this area has had huge impacts from not just Harvey that parked on top of Houston and Galveston. So a lot of work needs to be done in Galveston and Houston. But the recent spate of storms that have continued to come through, you saw the flooding in Austin, et cetera. There's a lot of great work that needs to be done here. A lot of money is available for small business. And let's take a look at some of their opportunities. You can see pictures of the border wall. So the design does change based on where it's at. If you're interested in them, go see booth number 762. Some remote areas, as you can imagine, but a tremendous amount of work needs to get done. And I'll tell you this, none of us really know where the funding will go. So there is an opportunity, depending on the whims of the Congress and budgets, this could balloon to a massive program in the blink of an eye. So if you're interested in this and being on the, the shelf on the ready rack, should monies become available, go see booth 762, Southwest Division. That's kind of what I was getting at. You can see the work that is planned right now, $1.6 billion planned, but it could go multitudes higher. Okay. Now let's go out to Hawaii. And actually, we got a speaker from Hawaii that's is coming over here. So he's going to speak on behalf of the Air Force shortly. But a different kind of program in Hawaii. Not as much of the civil works, but some, but a lot of work in our military construction that needs to be done. So they do, obviously, as an island and with many critical ports, need a lot of dredging work done, and that's the one I've highlighted up here. They also have Alaska districts, so it's not just Hawaii, but think of Alaska, and think of missile defense systems that are being placed in the Pacific Northwest up there. So that is part of POD, Pacific Ocean Division, at booth 1145, and you can see their focus in the bottom left-hand corner. Now let's look at some of the projects. So dredging, as I mentioned, a lot of dredging on here is shown, but I would also tell you, keep in mind, which is not on this chart, those things that I just talked about, some heavy construction in terms of missile defense sites in Alaska, military construction, a lot of work. If you are interested in working in Japan, a huge program going on in Japan. Still a lot of work going on in Korea. So if you're interested, not just in the Hawaii and Alaska region, but Japan, Okinawa, and Korea, go see booth 1145. Don't sell yourself short on the opportunities. Okay, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. What I just showed you was really the regular program. Okay, and I want to remind everybody that the president gives us a pretty good budget, but Congress, over the last few years, has given us more money. And the reason they've given us more money is because they trust the work that you do and our ability to get the work done. Now, we're going to have a huge challenge this year, and I think that'll be one of the questions somebody will ask later. We've got almost a record-setting regular program. But on top of that, because of Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria, we were given over a $17 billion supplemental. Now, 15 billion of that has to go to areas affected by Harvey, Irma, and Maria. So a lot of work in Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, Florida, and Texas. But that bill also covered states that were hit by multiple disasters over the last few years. And I'll show you a map of where that work is. Now, there's some strings attached to this. These supplemental funds and these projects that now qualify, we got to get done and get done fast. Okay, and I think, as we start to look at the state of industry out there and the availability of contracts and contractors to come out and do some of the work, we're going to be stretched. So we need each and every one of you. So let's take a look at this. Go to booth 344, and I'm going to highlight just my area in a minute. But the areas in pink is where the preponderance of money is going to go. Some in Hawaii. You can see just some of the allocations by state. So again, if you're regional based, use this as a guide where you want to go. And then this is a little bit more detail of where some of these supplemental funds will go. I mean, Puerto Rico has a lot of monies going that way. And I would tell you again, this work has to be done in a timely manner, and it's got to be done top quality. And all these, by the way, these projects in the supplemental, I think important for you to know, all those projects are what we call funded to completion. So you don't have to guess how much is available next year or the year after. It better be done. But it's funded through completion. Now, these are just some of the things that I think I've hit on some of these already. We have to leverage all of you. The money is there, and now we just got to get after it. I think it's important that you're here to have a discussion afterwards how you think you can fit in on that. Okay, because I think many people say, well, if you're going to want it done fast, you're going to just hire the bigs. That's not the case. Okay. And these are just some of the supplementals. A huge one up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Okay, so one of the things, this supplemental is allowing us to get after projects that have been needed for years but never funded because potentially their benefit to cost ratio wasn't necessarily favorable. But Congress has now given us the authority to move forward. So take a look at some of these. Again, a lot of levee repairs. We are seeking a MATOC to do a lot of that work, but you still fit in. Here's some more. Huge work down here in the New Orleans district. Okay, Mike, raise your hand, Clancy. So come see Clancy if, you know, we got a major project in Baton Rouge, the co-meat diversion that needs to go on, and a lot of other key work that has not been accomplished. If you're into heavy earthwork and you need to work on levees, we've got a lot of money to get after. About 30% of our critical deficiencies in levee work along the Mississippi River. Okay, so that is not concentrated here, that's spread out along the river. So the monies Congress gave us in the supplemental is going to allow us to get after 30% of our deficiencies, and that's important to know. There's a little note on the Industry Day at the bottom, November 16th here in Baton Rouge, just up the road. And I'll show that again at the end. So I'm going to show some outreach events. I think you can get a copy of these or just take a picture, you'll be fine. But I think the slides are available, Don. So look at this, just a huge bunch of industry days coming up all over the area. Nashville's got one coming up, St. Louis, Fresno, California. So these are days that all of the divisions and districts are doing. Leave it up for just another second because there's another one coming. And here's some more. So a lot of them are down here in New Orleans. Got some up in Rock Island. Louisiana. Okay, so there they are. These are going to be very important. And I think if you looked at one on the last slide, November 6th, here in New Orleans, we called it Small Business 101. So if you want a refresher on how you can break into the system, come to that. All right, I think that's it for me, Don, and I look forward to questions after, either now or after the next presentation. So thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll hold the questions until the end. But we have another returnee to the stage from last year, and actually, if this gentleman got paid for presentations, I think he's available for retirement, and that would be Bob Silver coming to us as a Director of Military Construction Programs at Headquarters NAVFAC. We have something in common that I found out last year, and I would have never said this, but we are Delawareans. And
Is that a word?
I think it is now.
Just now.
Yeah, Delawareans, Delmarva, and so Bob graduated a mechanical engineering degree from the University of Delaware. He already went through the Blue Hen, but he'll explain it again if you'd like. It's kind of like the Blue Crab from Maryland, but he's done a phenomenal job. He actually knows the entire NAVFAC program now, having briefed the AE, horizontal construction. Do you have any more that you're going to go after, Bob? Oh, vertical. So he is now the chief of everything for that. But the other thing is Delaware is the first state, and it's not the smallest state. So me being a Rhode Islander, I went from the smallest state to the first state, and I'm going to stop there because as I told the movers, I said I only have one more move, and that's Arlington National Cemetery. But in any event. Without further ado, Bob, thank you and welcome to the stage.
Thank you for that kind-ish introduction. For those of you not familiar with NAVFAC, the Naval Facilities Engineer Command is a full-service cradle-to-grave installation, engineering, contracting command, primarily serving the Navy and the Marine Corps at 100 locations worldwide, also supporting the Air Force and the Army and other defense agencies with military construction worldwide. We have a lot of contracting opportunities. When I say cradle to grave, NAVFAC is with the Navy and the Marine Corps from the planning stages, the inception of for the projects, through the preliminary designs and justifications to Congress, through the design work, through the construction, the maintenance, and finally the demolition at someday. So we're out there fixing windows, doing minor maintenance, major maintenance to $200 million MILCON projects. So it's a lot of small business opportunities across all of our portfolio that we do for the Department of Navy. Today we're going to talk about military construction, but before I do that, greetings from Rear Admiral John Corca, our new chief who came on board, took command just about 2 weeks ago, the Chief of Civil Engineers, the King Bee of the Fighting Seabees, sends his regards. He's pulled away on urgent matters, including Hurricane Florence recovery at Camp Lejeune, which got hit, and hit hard. Any Seabees in the crowd today? There's a few. You raw Seabees. Okay, NAFAC is highly committed to small business. We have about $8 billion overall in eligible dollars for small business. The goal that we're given by the Department of Navy is to execute 46% of that $8 billion with small business, and we exceed that goal. We exceeded that goal last year, as we normally do. We got 50%. We hit all the categories except this year we fell a little short on women-owned small businesses. That's a little unusual. We're usually hitting them all, and we're going to continue to do the best and have our commitment to small business because we really need you. As I mentioned, today is going to focus on military construction, horizontal construction. Our portfolio of work includes all kinds of horizontal construction, pavements, roads, airfield, aprons, and I'll show you the projects, but I'm not going to go through them. Utilities, ranges, site improvements, water, wastewater, entry control points, force protection, dry docks, piers, some pretty big stuff, ammo magazines worldwide. So we've got a lot going on now and in the future. Today we're going to talk about the work, a little about the workload, where the work is and how to find the work, and maybe if we have time we'll talk about a couple of challenge areas. But the demand signal that we're getting from the warfighter and from leadership is they need the facilities and the infrastructure faster than we've been delivering it. That's the demand signal across the DoD. We're working with the Corps of Engineers to try to disrupt things, to try to change the game a little bit. My boss, Joe Gott, the chief engineer, is working close with Lloyd Caldwell, the executive director at USACE, and working with the congressional staff members and OSD to try to change some of the rules that have been around a long time that create friction and just make things go slow. So we're trying to get some things done there, and we look for your input today, this week, anytime, on what we can do better to allow you to go faster, to allow you to go more effectively and more efficiently. So we're always interested in hearing about that. I appreciate that. Our booth is 1243. We have a small business director down there and some of our regional small business directors. Their job is to connect small businesses with small business opportunities at NAFAC. So please see them, and I'll talk about our website in just a little bit. Just a real quick slide on where we've been in terms of workload, and really the setup here is we've got about $3.5 billion worth of military construction this year. What's not shown there is another $1 to $2 billion of repair work that we do. But that's sort of now and in the past. Going forward and beyond, we're looking at increasing military construction programs with the Navy, supporting weapons platforms and new capabilities, recapitalization critical infrastructure, ships, subs, aviation training, and the Marine Corps with their infrastructure reset program and their Force 2025. On the Marianas Islands and Guam, a lot of acceleration going forward in construction. That is taking off now. And I'll say, as I alluded to with Hurricane Florence, well, I don't want to get ahead of the Marine Corps right now. They got hit hard. We're anticipating significant military construction projects and repair projects, perhaps in the hundreds of millions to a couple $1 billion range in the near future. They will probably seek a supplemental appropriation, but again, I don't want to get too far ahead of them, but that's an area we could really use some help going forward in the very near future. Just want to categorize work a little bit, not spend too much time on this slide, but overall at NAFAC, the Department of Navy, and our supported commands, the takeaway is that our projects are getting more complex. They're getting more unique, and there's an urgent need for operational capability. And with that, we are a big proponent and have used design build a lot. We like doing it. But the nature of the projects, we're training a little bit more design bid build than we have in the past, just by the nature of the projects. And you can see below kind of where the work is. I think the takeaway from there is Marianas, which is showing as 18% of the overall workload of the military construction. It used to be near the bottom. But again, with that ramp up in Marianas, that's going to continue to go very, very strong. You see our Southwest region, our Midland region, a lot of work, billion-dollar ranges, Washington, Southeast, and I'll talk about those in a second. A quick thing on the org chart, for those of you who follow this sort of thing, the takeaway is on the right-hand side, lower part, you'll see NAFAC Southeast and NAFAC Northwest. Those used to fall under our admiral associated with NAFAC Atlantic. To align better with the Pacific Fleet, they now fall under NAFAC Pacific. That's just an alignment of, to better align with the fleets they support, just for those who sort of keep score of that. not the greatest slide, but this is sort of how we break up the world with our by region. And NAVFAC has facility engineering commands, and they're generally aligned with Navy regions. And that's why you see that. You see NAVFAC, URAS-SWA on the right side. And I just want to point that one out because it's a good example. There we're supporting Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, Army through that AOR in Europe, in Southwest Asia, and Africa. However, with our Corps of Engineer partners, they are the design construction agent for most of Europe, and they contract or work for us. NAVFAC does Italy, Greece, Djibouti, Africa, and Spain, and a couple other places. But our Bahrain work, which is very important to the fleet, our Corps of Engineers partners execute that. On the other hand, we, in certain locations, NAVFAC executes Army projects. So we partner with each other to get the work done. And we both support the Air Force worldwide. We'll talk a little bit more about the workload. I want to show you a couple slides about and talk about our website and how to find the work. These are not really good slides. What I really want to point out to you is here. This is our small business website on the portal, on the internet. That's the best information from that slide. These are sort of some buttons. I want to have this slide redone, but the important thing is there's a button there for on the portal for the NAVFAC Military Construction Forecast. This is where we update monthly the MILCON projects that are going to come out for solicitation. And we did that years ago based on industry feedback, saying, well, we're trying to generate more competition for our work. They want to know, well, let us know when you're going to put it on the street. We'll be ready for it. We don't know. So we started doing that, and so you can find when, a heads up on when we're going to put something on the street on the military construction and some other large projects. Another good spot on our portal is this regional opportunities. This has commands specific to those various regions, URAS-SWA, NAVFAC Southwest, NAVFAC Midland, all those on regional opportunities at each of those spots. But it's more than just construction. You'll have AE comp opportunities on there, base services opportunities are on there, all kinds of really good information. And of course, and always, the Fedbizopps at the bottom. And I've heard the subcontracting is a really good a feature too, to let folks know, hey, who's got the big contract, who was awarded something, so you can look for subcontracting opportunities with some of our other industry partners that we're working with. The next few slides, I'm not going to go through in detail, but I just want to give you a character of those various regions. These are the military construction projects for FY19 and any prior year that have not awarded yet. So this is what we're working to award as quickly as we can right now, sort of the here and the now. You can find out about the FY20 military construction program when the President submits the budget in February of 2019. Every February, the President submits the budget. And that's when the next program becomes publicly available. And that's important because when that becomes publicly available, that's the signal, in February you see the FY20 projects for the Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, Army, and the other defense agencies. That means that they're going to start probably putting out solicitations soon in a few months or later in the same fiscal year. So that's sort of a good heads up. But these are the ones we're working to get awarded as quickly as we can now in URAS-SWA. Again, this is the horizontal. This afternoon, the vertical will have a longer list of various projects. Marianas, you see it's just Guam, all over the place. URAS-SWA, Djibouti, a lot of work there. Spain, Italy, some pretty cool places. Hawaii, another pretty cool place. K-Bay, the Marine Corps, Pearl Harbor. Mid-Atlantic, I wanted to mention Mid-Atlantic on the East Coast doing the mid part of the state and through the Northeast. You'll see you'll see some pretty big projects. As we go forward with the program, you're going to see the Navy coming out and the Marine Corps with some large $100, $200 million projects focused on ship repair facility recapitalization and future programs. I can't allude to that too much right now, but there's a lot of investment coming in Portsmouth, in Norfolk, in Kitsap, Bremerton, in the Northeast Puget Sound, in Pearl Harbor. You can see some major investments by the Navy at those locations, Kings Bay, et cetera. I did want to point out, Northwest, as I alluded to a second ago, a few projects going out there, but that's going to grow. NAVFAC Southeast. I do want to point out Skipper, Captain Mike Monreal, the commanding officer of NAVFAC South. He's here with us today with some of his team members. We welcome him. Mike's got a huge workload out there. He needs a lot of help. He's looking for small business support as well. They've been doing a really good job of executing their prior year program. They have a lot of FY19 projects here. Gitmo, a nice project for a solid waste management facility that's desperately needed out there. Work at Kings Bay, that workload's going to grow. We're listing some smaller projects as well. These are our UMC projects. But there's other larger projects that will come out the chute as well. Barksdale Air Force Base that we support. He also supports Keesler Air Force Base as well. Again, a good opportunity for work in that particular region as well. Southwest region, Marine Corps bases, Navy bases. NAVFAC Washington is the national capital region, Quantico, Virginia, Annapolis, and that part of the country. Finally, I want to end up with this slide and just talk a little bit about some things that might be helpful to you very quickly. Pre-award, what you can see from the military construction appropriations is how much Congress appropriated for a project. What might be helpful for you who don't know this, that project represents the construction costs we've estimated, plus 5% contingency, plus, if it's in the U.S., 5.7%, what we call SIO, or 6.5%, 6.2% SIO if it's overseas. If you back out those last two numbers, you'll get the construction dollars that have been appropriated. I mention that because if the bid climate has been very, very unfavorable, particularly in the U.S., Japan to a great degree, and some other locations. And it's been so bad for a number of years, there's very little bid savings to fix projects that bust bids. What we've been doing, what we've been asking, we've been setting up our RFPs asking for a base bid at a smaller piece of the scope and bid options, so that if the bids come in higher than the Navy can afford or the Marine Corps can afford, we can give them the choice. Hey, we can either wait for bid savings if they ever materialize, or we can award what we can now, and you can seek the other scope later. So I say that to say this, as you're looking at projects, if your estimate is higher than the available funds, we could really use some help in identifying where are we high on the dollars. It's just sort of, we've been working with our contractor partners to gather that information. I'm going to go ahead and stop there and leave time, but thanks for your interest, and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, and another great job. Before we introduce our last guest speaker, it's that part of the program where we'd like to introduce a test question on what we've observed so far. So I didn't have a good engineering test question, so you saw me before walk over there and I picked something up off the floor, and it looks like this. And so I'm going to give this because the CBs are near and dear to my heart growing up, right where the birth they are. And so I'm going to ask CB Mike, if I were to show you this and you can actually bend it, what is this? Now don't over-engineer this, but what is it? And first, let me say, while these are reserved for just the guest speakers, I am giving away this New Orleans purified water, 16.9 fluid ounces. Okay, so, rubber band. That is not correct. I'm going to randomly ask somebody else in the audience, is there a Colonel Ivan Beckman out there? Now, if I were to show you this, what would you say that this is, Colonel Beckman? I know the young man up here knows exactly what this is. Don't make me go back to the general officer again.
I'm a paratrooper.
No, yeah, but it's simpler than that. I'm going to have to go to the general officer. Sir, do you know what?
Call it a retaining
A retainer band, exactly. This is a retainer band. I know it. Sir, you get a whole nother bottle of water. Let's give him another round of applause for that. You know, we can't make things simple in the Army. We have to call everything something. That's a retainer band. Ivan, I'm going to give you a chance at the very end to get that back. We have a new guest speaker representing the United States Air Force to our team, and it's Mike Holliday. I had an opportunity to talk with him briefly yesterday, and he's going to brief the Air Force program. He flew all the way in from Hawaii, and where he is the director of the U.S. Air Force Civil Engineering Center Pacific Division. He's originally from Missouri, so the Midwest. He's a big Kansas City Chiefs fan, Kansas City Royals, and he also has a son, a staff sergeant representing the United States Air Force in the reserve. He's a BYU graduate out of, in civil engineering. But as I went through that, and although we lived in the same place, there was another place that we also were together, but not at the same time, and you'll have to explain it. Pakistan? Somehow the Air Force selected, he was selected of the entire United States Air Force to go to the National Defense University in Pakistan. I only know one other person that went there, and I think General Kaiser knows who that one is too. Jim Delote, former Wilmington district. So what a great opportunity to get to Pakistan. I made my way in there accidentally. I didn't have a great compass like General Kaiser. I actually meandered. We didn't have a wall there then. So I found myself in Pakistan, had to get back into Afghanistan. But without further ado, let's welcome Mike Holliday to the stage.
Morning, all. I understand I'm the last thing between you and lunch, so I will. And questions, right. Well, you drive the questions, okay? So I drive the speed of this brief to get to those questions. So as already been mentioned, when we talk about military construction and that large-scale construction, the Navy and the Army are our executive agent for executing that level of construction. They execute plus 90% of that. There's a very small portion of that the Air Force retains and executes on their own. What I'm going to talk about today is more of our, what we call our FSRM program, Facility Sustainment, Restoration, and Modernization program. That program is nearly equal to our MILCON program on an annual basis. We execute somewhere in the magnitude of $900 million to $1 billion every year across the Air Force enterprise in FSRM. So don't let that title, because it's not MILCON, deter you from this work. This varies in scope from something that's maybe tens of thousands of dollars to something that's tens of millions of dollars. It's a broad spectrum of work, depending on the class of work and what's being accomplished. I'm going to speak briefly just about the AFCEC organization. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, I'm going to go through it really quick. And then I'm going to show how the work is split up. We do a lot of our work, our FSRM work, is executed centrally, or I guess decentralized at the installation level. So we'll talk about that. Then I'm going to show you what we're looking at as far as horizontal work, both design and construction, and then really where you can go to get that information on a monthly basis and see what's being released at the installation level. If you want to do this level of work, you really need to find an Air Force base that's near you or that you want to work at and get in sync with that local contracting office and the SBA office that services that contracting office. They are the ones that get these projects for release and review, and those offices have their local goals that they set for the amount of work that they release to the small business community. So our AFCEC organization, it's broken into 7 main directorates. It's based out of San Antonio, Texas, and has a headquarters also in Tyndall Air Force Base, Florida. Each directorate represents a different product line, providing civil engineering support across the Air Force enterprise. We provide a hub of expertise. We manage various programs centrally. We have capabilities in strategic planning, basing, facility planning and programming, design and construction, operations and maintenance, environmental, real property, readiness, engineering, and housing. Some of our centrally managed programs include our sustainment, restoration, and modernization program, our environmental quality program, NEPA compliance, and real property management. This centralization provides an enterprise perspective, comprehensive portfolio management, allows us to put the right resources towards the right requirements at the right time. Our requirement to acquisition. So we utilize something now called the CTO, the Construction Tasking Order. For those of you that are in the Air Force or associated with the Air Force, we feel the need to tie things back to terms that the pilots use so that they can understand what we're trying to say. They utilize something called the Air Tasking Order, so we felt the need to get into their vernacular and call it the Construction Tasking Order. So over the course of several years, we've moved our FSRM program from a program development in year of execution. So we would develop that program and execute it in the same year that we were developing it to a multi-year integrated program, placing our resources against the most critical needs of the Air Force, where we used to spread this out by MAGCOM, and then in some MAGCOM's peanut butter spread it across our installations and let those installations choose how and what and where they wanted to spend that funding. We now pull together a centralized list of requirements across the Air Force and prioritize those and then allocate funding against those. The installation builds that list, the IPL, the Integrated Priority List. Those are all funneled into AFCEC back in San Antonio, where they rack and stack that and build the construction tasking order. And then our parent organization, Installation Mission and Support Center, advocates for that funding with the air staff so that we can execute those requirements. We build a 2-year IPL right now, so we are working design in FY19 for projects that we're going to execute for construction in FY20. This battle rhythm establishes known cyclical milestones so that commanders can project the impact of construction activities on our weapon system platforms, where we used to wander into a wing commander's office and say, oh, we need to do something, and expect him to react to impact on the airfield. We are trying to project that out further now because our installations are our weapons platforms that we launch and recover to. This is where we execute our funds. So as you can see, the majority of that funding we project to be executed by the installation. AFCEC will take up a percentage of that, and then we execute a significant percentage also through our local Corps of Engineer districts. And then there's a small slice there through others, so some through NAVFAC and other agencies that we execute that funding. Our O&M project, so this is work that AFCEC is specifically doing, okay? You can see what we have in the way of design and construction, and then what we are projecting AFCEC to execute in design and construction. And we expect to see a significant increase over the next few fiscal years. Just as we've been talking about Camp Lejeune, Tyndall Air Force Base was equally smacked by Hurricane Michael and is going through significant recovery operations as well. This is what we're projecting in design. This is horizontal design. And so you can see the installations there. And again, these are just the projects that AFCEC is going to get after that have been identified for centralized design activity through San Antonio. And then this is our construction. And this is CONUS as well. So this doesn't get into OCONUS activity or overseas activity. We post our business opportunities out on Fedbizopps. And really, this is the slide right here, and we showed this yesterday. Colonel Matthews mentioned this yesterday during his briefing. But this is where you can go and get the information that you want to receive. First and foremost, if you want to join the Air Force, there's a button right up there on the upper right-hand corner that you can push and join the Air Force, okay? But you can see all solicitations. You can see the construction, environmental, housing projects with authority. So those are projects that have been authorized for execution at the installation level. So you can tie into that and see if there's something in there that strikes your interest that you'd like to go after. And with it, that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mayor. All right. Okay, it's come to that time before we conclude to have a quick question and answer. We actually have the answers. Some of the other panels just have questions. They actually have answers. So I said that when we began that we had a phenomenal panel and we had 2 phenomenal speakers, so we appreciate that very much. So thank you very much. Do we have any questions out there for the floor? Yes, ma'am. We have two mics up here, but I think that you can probably hear it.
Yes, we do. I'm sorry, it's 1220.
Yes, sir.
Please get back to the NAVFAC Southwest Market.
And all the slides are available on the SME website for download.
Was it area? Yeah.
Which one is that one, Mike?
Southwest. Yeah.
Southwest?
Yeah.
Northwest? Southwest? Okay.
It's not showing up on the screen, though.
Yeah. Man, I didn't bring my glasses today.
Want some readers?
All right.
There.
Oh, you're good.
That's all you needed?
Going to the back.
Okay. Yes, sir.
What contracting mechanisms are being used to design these horizontal construction projects, and how many of them are going, or do you do design build on a horizontal construction project?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I think what you're going to find is that we're still early in our process of looking at either the supplemental or some of the normal programs. I'm going to ask Wendell to come and grab a mic and talk about it, but we're looking at multiple different types of acquisition strategies, whether it's early contractor involvement, looking at different things. Wendell, why don't you go ahead and...
That's correct. So we are considering those as well as design build. And really a lot of it is forums like this where we get the feedback from industry and your capability. That's going to drive those decisions as to what we do. So, but we do know that some of these are going to lend themselves to small businesses as well, even in the preliminary market research. So I would recommend, again, get with our booth, and there's POCs on there where you can provide your feedback. And the industry day, November 16th in Baton Rouge would be an excellent, opportunity there as well. So I'm not sure who asked the question, but hope that.
Hey, if your contract, if you're like Wendell, if you're part of the Corps or anybody else's contracting officer, raise your hand so people could see it. We got
Everyone
a couple in
yeah,
here.
is
There you
from
go.
Either contracting or small business for the Corps. Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. You saw their hands there. Yes, sir. So MVD is at 344. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
but all the other divisions have the same thing, and I
Right.
put those booth numbers out. The other thing I'd highlight on that too is why these engagements are going to be important. We understand that the market's changing, so we're looking at ways that we can kind of reduce some of the risk to the contractors and assume some of that ourselves to help drive some of the costs down. So if you've got ideas that have escaped us on how to kind of reduce the risk we're putting on you, which is driving your costs up, we got to hear that.
Any other questions? Okay. Sir, would you like to just expand on one other piece on?
Yeah,
your-
I'm gonna, so we're beating around the bush on a couple of these with these questions, but a lot of you are be thinking, hey, we're talking about different strategies. You just heard we got a lot of money to spend in a short time to do it and do it right. Okay, so a lot of you are thinking, well, this is going to push me out of the market. These are all going to go to bigs. That's not true. It's not the case. Our small business goals have not changed. So we still got to hit those metrics, okay, and we're going to do it. Okay, the one thing I would say is that on all these things that I showed you, and I'm sure the other gentleman that spoke, small business has to come through. You got to deliver, and I think the chief talked about it the other day. When you're bidding on projects, we got to make sure that you're able to come through. You're going to find plenty of opportunities either as a prime or as a sub. But I think what you'll find for the Corps is we're still early on in sort of design, how we're going to go after our acquisition strategies, and our market research is going to be a huge component of that. So the slides that I showed you for those industry days are going to be very important venues to have these discussions. Okay, so the answer is yes, there is so much work to be done. We have got to leverage every ounce of industry that's out there. And we recognize that you're having a hard time hiring people as well. We've seen very recently some of our contracts, we're seeing the effects of the economy out there, that we've had multiple recent bid busts or ones that have come real close. We've had multiple, just really good projects out there that we've had no bidders or one bidder on. So we're recognizing that there's a change in the marketplace, and we're going to need your insights and inputs. But I would just tell everyone that no matter what our acquisition strategies are, as we bring them to maturity and fruition, The small business component is integral to all that. And that's why I said, those folks who raised their hand a minute ago, come talk to them, because we need everything that the industry has to offer. And I think that would sum up, I think, the way all of us are feeling right now.
Absolutely.
Great. All right.
Thanks,
Wait,
General.
unless there are any other parting ones, we appreciate your time this morning and have a wonderful and safe remainder of the Small Business Conference. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Don.
Well said, sir. Thanks a lot.